Well, hello there, and thank you very much for clicking on this video today. So, in amongst our political turmoil and Keir Starmer seemingly leaving, good riddance, Andy Berman, whatever it's called, Burnham, there we go, seemingly coming in, that's dominated the headlines. It does mean, rather, that some other things have been lost in terms of news and things that are just as important, or if not more important. So, there's a charity called the Baby Bank Alliance that has raised an alarm that charities simply cannot continue to shoulder the impact of child poverty, and that the government, whoever the government is, needs to step in to give more support to struggling families. So, what they're pointing to is an 11% increase in demand, with 400,000 children now having their essential needs met by these overwhelmed services, and they insist that the government remember that all families in the UK deserve a livable life. So this has been reported on in the Guardian and the Canary as well. So let's kind of go into this a little bit. So poor housing conditions in London and in other places have been cited as playing a significant role in the support families desperately need, signifying how policy around housing must be more beneficial to people, must implement things like rent control and things like that. We will get onto that a little bit later. The chair of the Baby Bank Alliance, Sophie Livingston, told the Guardian, I believe that, and I quote, we often have families that needing us to replace all their children's clothes because they've been rotted by mould. She also added, we've never have enough beds. It's really difficult when we come across a family sleeping on the floor in infested accommodation. So when Starmer resigned, he kind of cited having lifted children out of poverty, which is just completely untrue, and it's purely based on lifting the child benefit cap. And in fact, the timely piece in The Guardian just lays bare how misleading that statement really is. So Starmer says that fewer families are living in poverty thanks to him. Meanwhile, charities are helping struggling parents who have seen demand rise by 11% last year. So this is not exactly a success story. And whereas the growing pressure on baby banks paints a far more honest picture of life in Britain today and shows just how out of touch politicians kind of are with the reality of life, caught up, what we have is a cost of greed crisis, profiteering by major corporations, by major businesses who've seen increases of costs as just an excuse just to ramp up prices. And our government and reform and conservatives, people that really kind of matter in these kind of things, just shrug their shoulders and kind of go, oh, well, maybe if we deport some black people, maybe that'll solve it. So, Save the Children formed the Baby Bank Alliance to advocate for over 400 baby banks, which are doing their best to meet the crucial need of impoverished families, citing the rise in cost of essential needs such as food, energy, and housing. And they call on the government to step up as more demand is being faced. So a record number are living in poverty, affecting the quality of life of some 4.5 million children. Now, the government U-turn on its two-child cap would have worsened these stats. So there is that to bear in mind. But let's be clear, that is just a band-aid, a plaster, to try and put over what is a deep-rooted problem. So Sophie Livingston, who is also the chief executive of Little Village, a London-based network of baby banks, told The Guardian, it's pretty damning, isn't it? Families are needing help for systemic reasons, not because there's a one-off shock to their lives. So, as the charity then goes on to say, much of the struggle reported by families, according to the charity, are due to poor housing, we kind of mentioned earlier, with many needing to replace clothes due to mold-infested homes that they live in. And when it comes to housing reform, rent reform, it's just taken decades, I mean literally decades, to get even the most basic things done. And a big reason for this is that MPs, members of the House of Lords, the ruling class in general, are landlords themselves. They often have second homes or third homes or invested in companies that rent out homes. So they're incredibly unwilling to basically do anything that will make ordinary people's lives better. People who are living in rented accommodation, living in whatever social housing there is, because they profit off it being shitty. They profit off that, and so they're completely unwilling. So the housing crisis has been getting worse year on year. I don't think that's news to anyone, with rents pricing families out of suitable accommodation and lack of severe social housing, which we have because it was all sold off in the 80s under Thatcher. You can thank her. You can thank her corpse for that. And when it comes to things like social housing, what does exist is in pretty bad condition, even if you get it secure. And so things like rent control. Rent control is normal in other countries, and yet you dare suggest it in this country, and people, for some bizarre reason, even people who actually don't own second homes or aren't even invested in companies that rent out homes or things like that, even they flip their lid and start going, wow, it's communism, it's socialism, it can't be done. It can't be done, and it shouldn't be done. Like, even when you start saying, well, maybe we should implement even basic things like you can't, I don't know, increase rent by more than inflation, even something really basic like that, people just shit themselves and shit the bed and just wag their finger and just outright refuse to even entertain the idea, or just kind of shrug their shoulders and go, it doesn't matter to me. I've got a mortgage. I'm not living in social housing. I'm not living in rent accommodation. So why should I care? And these landlords are charging record rents, while too many of the tenants are stuck with homes which have black mould, damp, and just homes that are just unsafe. And so families are having to fork out a fortune every month, only to be treated like an inconvenience when they demand just basic things, like, can we not have mold infesting my house that I live in? Thank you. It's not an unreasonable demand, I don't think. So when the Renters' Right bill did come in, there was a genuine chance to kind of shift, but the government completely watered it down and weakened it. Because, again, most of them are landlords themselves and just aren't interested in this. And they can only see beyond their own greed, their own accumulation of wealth. That's all they care about. They don't particularly care about actually helping kind of ordinary people. So, outside London, the Northwest is cited as being the region with the highest number of families in need of support. So the Reverend Caroline Hewitt, who set up the Little Lighthouse Baby Bank, has said that that the need has increased since 2019, with families making sure they do not miss their referrals week on week due to the rising cost of baby formula and nappies. And for those that don't know, for quite a lot of these items, you basically have to be referred to. You can't just come in and take them, or whatever it is. You have to be referred to them since the demand is so great. She states that receiving support for these essential baby items often mean the family is able to buy more food to support the wider family, which shines a spotlight and demonstrates just how much the price of things like baby formula and nappies and other kind of essential equipment like that has increased, even compared to things like food. And when you kind of throw in the staggering costs of nursery fees, it's hardly surprising that more and more people are being priced out of the workplace and are left having to turn to charities just to put food on their table and to buy basic fucking stuff to clean their own children. And what makes this worse is this is not inevitable. There is a particular vicious and unpleasant strain of neoliberalism and kind of conservatism as well that just kind of shrugs us off and says, well, it's kind of inevitable. We can't do anything about it at all. And those people would rather see big corporations and the super rich just continue to have insane and exorbitant and obscene profits, whilst people are just completely crushed by the system. And we're supposed to be one of the richest countries on the planet, and actually, we are. The resources is there. It's just all in bank accounts that rich prick zone. That's where the money is. That's where it's gone. Over the years, we have seen this. The standard of living in this country has slowly and slowly and slowly declined over the years. And successive governments, have pointed at different things, used distraction tactics to try and distract the general populace into believing that, well, it's the fault of those EU migrants, which was the big thing in Brexit. If we get rid of them and we leave the EU, then that will solve the problems somehow magically. How does deporting people stop landlords from increasing their rent by double? Which happens. I was reading an earlier bit about a woman saying that her rent has doubled over the past couple of years in the place that she lives in London. How does deporting someone who came from Sudan, how does that stop that exactly? It doesn't. How does harassing an immigrant or an immigrant family somehow stop the drastic increase in baby formula and nappies? It doesn't. It's just the same old story of rich people just basically hoarding the resources for themselves and then just pointing at other people and going, other human beings who are often just as poor as you are, or possibly poorer, going, no, they're the real problem, not me on my massive pile of gold that I'm sitting on. I'm not the problem, it's those people. It's those people over there who've got very little. Those are the ones you should focus on, not me, whilst I sit in my ginormous house with the added, which is probably one of four that I own here in foreign countries, and tax that I don't pay. They're the problem. And until kind of and the UK people kind of really genuinely recognise that no, they're the real problem, then things will never get any better. But hey, thank you very much for clicking on this video today. I will catch you later. Bye bye.